We have said before that businesses in Sydney were struggling in the late colonial period of New South Wales 1838 to 1851. Nonetheless, there was a time of progress and there was money to spend by some lavishly, and yet, like we have today, the dispossessed and mentally challenged group were still suffered. Hi, I'm Michael Bischel, Australian historical fiction writer here, and we are looking at those aspects that are metrics of a progressive and growing society, even in New South Wales in the late 1840s, the measurement sticks. Now, gas lighting was in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Hobart and Launceston. According to the Sydney Morning Herald, the cabbage tree hatted branch of society, the locals, still made comments about those elegant in dress and speech. Prostitution was still on the same scale as it had been in the early days, proportionate to the population, sad to say. The vulgarians from Sydney town still made embarrassing spectacles of themselves at balls and other happenings. At the Mayor's Fancy Dress Ball in Sydney on the 13th of July 1847, emancipist, ex-convict, Robert Cooper was staggering around all night drunk, while another emancipist, Sam Lyons, kept on going on about how many peas he had digested. There were magnificent dinner parties as well. According to the Herald again, at Camperdown, the Mayor of Sydney entertained 80 guests at a dinner. They enjoyed goose, ham and a huge pie and other strong drink to make them inebriated, and to cause some guests to make good night such a certainty that they had to be led away from the table. In the big cities, the wealthy squatters from the country would welcome strangers as their guests in the hotels of the bars and drink with them. There was much variety in attitude towards drunkenness. I suppose that gives the impression that Sydney and Australians are big drinkers. The magistrates of Sydney at that time accepted the fact that once a year on St Patrick's Day, there was a general lightening of restrictions on mishaps and minor crimes as a result of drunken behaviour. The breweries, Coopers, Wrights and Tooth all sold copious amounts and made money to the point of them getting massive wealth exhibited by their mansions in Darling Point in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. This variety of opinion on an inebriation also extended to insanity, rather sadly again. Now, until about 1846, asylums were disgusting, harsh and brutal. Often the inmates of asylums lived worse conditions than people in prison. Terrible. There were men like Charles Cooper who saw the plight of the institutionalised and wanted to act on this. There was a benevolent asylum in Sydney since 1821, and with a population of 44,000 in 1851, there was just over 300 inmates, containing 80% of those were convicts. So those who had wealth and spare cash to throw around, life was pretty good, and the parties lavish. For the ordinary persons of New South Wales, life as a tradesman in the building industry was like it is today, other than without technology, and people got on with their lives as best they could, much like today. General businesses still struggled, and as we've mentioned before, if you wanted a job or earn money, you could always go bush and get work on the land. That is a snapshot of our Sydney starting to proud up, to start to say I'm something during the later part of the late colonial period. In future videos, we'll look at some of the struggles of the families of the earliest settlers, especially powerful women who supported their menfolk. That's all from me, Michael Bischel. Bye for now, and thanks for watching.